Welcome to Soulful Practices Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Holling-brooks, and over the past 20 years, I have been on a journey of healing and awakening. I'm also a coach and practitioner for clients on their journey of unbridling their true self. The number one question I'm asked is, what meditation or practice will help me reach my goals? While there is no one meditation or secret mantra that will unlock our own awakening, there is a doorway that will lead us there. And that's the doorway of learning and cultivating the skills of self-reflection and contemplation. Each episode of this podcast offers you pocket teachings and practices that you can implement right away to help you courageously connect with living your authentic soul-led life. Let's dive into this week's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 23 of Soulful Practices Podcast. I can't believe that we're coming close to the end of season 2. And in this season, we have been dedicating it all to talking about the different ways in which we can cultivate more love and compassion for ourselves and for those around us, and really engage life as a way that we are moving from love and joy instead of fear. And as we've been kind of looking at the different ones, it's been a bit of a peeling back kind of those different layers. There's a story out there, it's called the Golden Buddha, in which there was a discovery in a village of what they thought was a clay Buddha. And as they started to move it from the monastery in which it was in, and they were going to move it over to another one, it accidentally cracked itself. And when it cracked itself, there was light that was shining out from this crack. And as they began to try, first they were going to try to repair it, and then they got kind of curious, like, what is that? And they started peeling back the layers of this, and underneath all this clay that had been adorning the Buddha that was at this monastery, they realized that underneath of it was a golden Buddha. And the monks, the thought was that they covered up the gold that had been collected from the villagers and from all the different places, carefully crafted into this beautiful ornate golden Buddha. And they were afraid that it was going to get stolen or taken away or harmed or damaged in some way. And so over the years, they covered it up with the clay and molded that into the Buddha. But at the heart of it was this golden Buddha. And the metaphor of this story, this parable, is that we do the same thing, right? We cover up the gold that is within us, our light, our shining, our ability to really love ourselves and our life, and let ourselves spread our wings on that stage of life and shine. We cover that up over the years with protective layers that allow us to maybe connect with other people in a way that matches them, but maybe not us. Maybe we even bring in protective mechanisms that have us dimming our light a little bit because we don't want to become a target to something or someone, or to disappoint ourselves. And so little by little, we cover up who we truly be, and little by little, those protective layers become the new normal. They become who we see ourselves to be, and who we see our life to be, and then even how other people see us. And we forget that underneath all these layers of protective mechanisms and trauma responses and ways in which we were trying to protect ourselves, that underneath all that is this beautiful golden essence within us. And to me, the work of really being in a self-work practice or a healing practice, or anything that allows you to have self-inquiry and seek self-knowledge, the purpose of these practices is to help us dissolve these layers, to allow the golden light that is within us to shine once more, so that we can authentically be living and leading and loving the life that we're in. And so that's what we've been up to so far in season 2 of Soulful Practices, is uncovering that beautiful light that is within you. And I thought of, as I was sitting here and I was really kind of diving into what quote would really kind of help bring us into the end of this season, especially set us up for the season episode 24, which will come at the end of the season, is this quote from Oscar Wilde kept coming in. And for those of you who don't know, Oscar Wilde is a kind of infamous and renowned Irish playwright and novelist and poet. He is known for his stage play, The Importance of Being Earnest, along with a bunch of other ones that are out there. And the quote that he wrote, and he died, I think, at the age of 46 back in 1990. And he wrote this quote that says, "To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance." And I just love this quote. To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. So if we can really begin to cultivate that ability to love ourselves and to be compassionate with ourselves and to lovingly dissolve these clay layers that are blocking us from seeing our true light of who we truly be, can we accept that as those clay layers got there, it wasn't to, quote, dim ourselves, it was to protect ourselves. And so the way in which we dissolve these protective layers around us, if we can really have it within us, then we can rewrite the story that somehow those layers were bad or wrong or harmful or intending to hurt us, versus seeing them as that they were a beautiful part of us. And to me, that's that lifelong romance, right? It is about allowing myself to connect and build that trust, build that love affair with the gold within me, and that allows the clay to slowly dissolve and say, okay, I don't have to be here anymore, because there is this beautiful, loving spirit coming to be with the gold that's within me, right? And the interesting thing is it's not about one or the other. So the story of the golden Buddha, you could say, oh, they had to take away the clay to be able to embrace the gold that was in it. But before that was seen, the Buddha was still loved and cherished in that city, in that monastery, and still honored, right? And so can we start to see that these parts of us that we might view as clay covering us up, can we rewrite the story on how they became a part of us, why they were there, and even that there's something that we need to distance ourselves from, and instead can we see that as a definite part of our story? So I know for me personally, there are tons of moments in my life that I used to really condemn myself and judge myself for. There were tons of choices and actions and thoughts and experiences and events that really pushed me to want to, if I looked at them, I was like, can I just delete that from my timeline? Can I just like cover it up and be like, that part of my life never existed, right? And la la la, see no evil, hear no evil. And yet to do so is not really one possible. We can't say that that never existed in my lifetime, because it did. And those parts of me were there. And then can I rewrite the story though of seeing them as a horrible parts of me? And instead can I see them for what they were, that protective layer that was there? So this episode is building off of Tara Brach's episode from episode 22, that when we liberate ourselves from the prison of trance, from the prison of these limiting thoughts or ideas or perspectives and attachments to the way we want to view ourselves and these different aspects of us, when we allow ourselves to break free from that trance, we begin to see ourselves, the different aspects of us, the different layers in which we had to project who and how we were. We can see those moments of time in a way that stops waging war against ourselves, condemning myself for those moments in which I maybe showed up in a way that is totally outside of alignment of who I am. And instead, I can meet those moments with a wise and a compassionate heart, that I can help myself begin to see the survival responses, the clay that was covering that up, and really start to say, okay, As I dissolve this, I no longer need this here. What is a new choice I can make? What is a way in which I can connect in with living and loving in a most lifelong romance ever that's out there? And that I can believe that compassion and courage and all these beautiful things can come to me, right? So, in doing so, we start to really be able to love ourselves. We begin to be able to be in that lifelong romance and that love affair with ourselves, with the beauty that is our life, the gift that is our life. Right now, in this moment, this is where we can uncover that goldenness. We can't change what clay got covered up, but we sure the heck can have an influence of the whether we keep that clay there or we allow it to dissolve and to allow that beautiful light within us. And this brings us to the present moment, right? It is in the present moment that this is where we have choice. We don't have choice past. So when we look backwards, trying to say, I should have brought a different choice in, I should have made a different thing, I should have done that, I should have done this, why didn't I do that? All of that we have no influence over. We're hemorrhaging our energy into that. But same thing as if I look forward, oh, I should be doing this, I should be making this choice. If I make this choice should come forward. Again, I'm hemorrhaging all of my energy into a what if, right? But right now, in this moment, if I have the ability to connect with love, to connect with joy, to connect with the happiness that is present within that moment, then now I'm no longer stuck in a hardship and a heartbreak, only that from the past or the future dictating how I'm going to show up in the present. The irony that I think about this quote from Oscar Wilde is that this is the medicine, the soul medicine that he really needed to be able to love himself just as he was. I don't know how many of you know too much about his infamous life and his rise into great grandeur and then the fall into absolute disgrace. And I won't go too far into it to make it a thing, but basically he was condemned for having a lifestyle and that he had, and it was found at the time that he was found guilty and imprisoned and really disgraced in the whole entire world for the type of lifestyle that he wanted to live. And he suffered for 2 years in a hard labor camp prison where he really ended up never truly coming out of that prison. His body left, but his mind, his heart, and his soul were really left in shambles after his prison sentence. And he was never able to recover, and his body actually ended up dying so young at 46 because of what the illnesses that he contracted when he was in that prison. And when I was putting this episode together, I was really kind of struck by the dichotomy of this beautiful quote. If you learn to love yourself, you will open yourself up to a lifelong romance. If we learn to love and accept ourselves, we can be in that dance of love with both ourselves and our lives for all time eternity. And that's the very thing that he was really struggling with within his life, was to love these aspects of him that at the time were condoned and condemned and said that they were wrong and that they were sinful and all these other problems. And so that really got me kind of looking at that struggle that happens within us. Here he knows this is the key. The love and acceptance of ourselves is how we free ourselves into being in a love affair with our life. And yet, the weight of his past, the turmoil of the pain and the suffering that happened to him, and the division that was in him kept him from fully embracing himself and really letting himself be free from the weight of his past. And he channeled this beautiful quote, and it was there to help him However, he couldn't find a way to work his way through the clay to be able to get to the golden Buddha within, right? And so I believe this is such a tale for all of us about compassion, that if we can really open up to loving even those clay moments, even, we don't have to say that they're beautiful as far as like, oh, I love them, I want more of them. It's like, no, we can allow ourselves to see the beauty that's held in the sorrow, that's held in the hardship. And there is that gold underneath that is wanting to be found. This is that concept of post-traumatic growth, right? And so in this tug of war that I know I have felt for sure in this lifetime, I really felt drawn in this particular episode to share about how do we work through those stumbling blocks? Like, how do we work through those moments where for me, they were a pretty big swatch, of my life that I was just like, yeah, I could have done totally without that. I didn't take care of myself in a way that did love myself in those years. I didn't view anything about what was happening in my life worthy of love. I carried tons of shame around myself. I fought and I tried so often in some of those years, especially in my early 20s, that I just wanted to be anybody but myself, right? And I tried to run from myself. I tried to bury these parts of me and of my psyche into like weird things. I tried to create images of myself that, well, let's try this layer and let's see how this one goes. And ultimately, I turned to a lot of self-abuse because I just didn't believe that I was worthy of love, right? Until one moment where I was able to say, you know what? Each of these layers of me, each of these ways in which I was trying to find a way to be worthy of love, as I was trying to become whoever I thought the image of me needed to be in order to be not harmed and accepted and loved, if I could see all of those, then I could see that they were trying. They were trying to protect me, they were trying to love me, and they were trying to bring me in a way through thoughts, through actions, and through ways of being that, yeah, pretty problematic. Not the best in the world. Things that I definitely wish I had not have had to experience, but I really need to bring compassion, bring forgiveness. And instead of trying to punish them, like what Thich Nhat Hanh said I shared with you in episode 21, these aspects of me that are, quote, behaving badly, they don't need to be punished. They need help. And by holding those aspects of me and the wounded parts of me that created that hostage situation within that prison of trance, somewhere in me was cutting me off from feeling that light, that warmth, that gold that's within me. And once I said, I'm willing to turn towards myself with love, I'm willing to accept myself with love, I'm willing to give myself love, even those different layers of me that I don't really particularly care for, if I can meet them with love and acceptance, then I could begin to let them dissolve. I could begin to see that that was a wounded part of me driving me and what it thought was the best way to protect me. I could see all the little ones inside of me that were just really struggling because they showed up on that stage of light with that, quote, gold shining out there, and it wasn't able to be received for whatever reason, or it was seen as a threat, or it was made fun of. It didn't match the people that were around me in different spaces and didn't have any avenue. So of course, like, I was not able to honor that myself, because if it's not honored around me as a little kid, how do you honor that for yourself? You don't have that consciousness. But now as an adult, I did have that ability to go back and do that. And I used to think that this was something because of the situation that happened with me when I was 13 and losing all my memories and losing the sense of self and then coming back online with no sense of self, that this was something that was really kind of extreme and something that was abnormal. And I would even like beat myself up for that. Like, wow, nobody else struggles this hard to find themselves. Why do, nobody else is making these kinds of choices and nobody else is abusing themselves this way. And then when I finally woke up, I realized, oh, wow, that was not something that was just for me. This is like a common human condition, right? I just experienced it in a way that felt very like separating. But in truth is we all feel this way. We all struggle, right? And the story of Oscar Wilde is just heartbreaking because he did have all of that fame and fortune. And it was like, he was met with just absolute disdain, disgrace, and taking that all away from him. Where if he had allowed himself in that 2 years in that prison to turn to himself with love and tend to those parts of him that felt betrayed, isolated, condemned, and running in survival place, then he would have been able to come out more in alignment with acceptance of himself. Now, granted the time frame, all that other stuff, but my heart just goes out to him. Hopefully it's not that bad. And in today's world, but it still is. I can hear myself saying it still is. Like we all have these aspects of where our society might not say to us that we can have that love affair with that aspect of us that we consider golden. And the question is, can we give that to ourselves, right? Can we give that to our life? And then can we give that to the beings that are within our life? And this isn't an easy thing to do, I know, yet I'm here and I'm living proof that it's not only possible, it's doable. And I've helped hundreds of clients and client after client really develop that similar self-love, compassion, and really unbridling their ability to have a love affair with their own life, to feel the passion that is present within them, to feel that excitement that is present within them, the desire that comes from engaging in our lives after years of being imprisoned and exiled within protective layer after protective layer after protective layer. That when that starts to become less and we start to be able to experience what it's like to live through ourself, that is such a huge shift, and it's amazing what happened. This reminds me of a story that I share in my first book, The Horse Cure, and where there is a young man, and I cannot remember for the life of me what I called him in there, so we'll just, I gave him a name. And it was a young man that I had been working with back in the day on the equine partnered psychotherapy side of our program. And this particular young man, he had been in and out of juvenile detention facilities, in and out of like foster care, in and out of different things like that, of really struggling to love himself. And in fact, he was about ready to turn 18. He was working with us to see if he could discover what was holding him in this pattern of he'd get sentenced, he'd go in, he'd do well in juvenile detention, he'd come out, he'd do a quick little jaunt in like a group home or something like that, then go back home. Then the pattern would repeat itself. He would break his probation, he would steal something, he'd fail a drug test, he'd skip school, he'd pick a fight with somebody, the judge would be forced to violate him again. That would put him into back into juvenile detention, and the cycle just continued and continued and continued. On this particular day, that really this idea of, can we turn towards ourselves with love? Can we believe in that light that is there, even if it's still hidden? He was working out in the arena with a horse that's named is Diesel. And Diesel is a beautiful, he's one of my, what I call heart horses. He was here really to help me reconnect with my heart as I helped him reconnect to his heart. And he's this huge 17 plus hand horse. So I'm 6'1", and his back comes up to the middle of my, like right with my eyes. So he's a huge horse. And he was asking Diesel to, quote, stand in the box. And this is just an exercise that there is a metaphoric box. There's nothing physical that he would ask the horse to stay in, and that he would be able to walk around the perimeter, go away, go do something, come back, and the horse would remain in the quote box and wait for him to come back. And so it takes a lot of trust. It takes trust in the person to leave the horse and to be able to go do something and say like, wow, are they going to honor that request? And I said, hey, can you wait here for me? The horse has to trust that the person's going to come back and not just leave them hanging, sitting in this spot being like, hey, I'm doing what you asked, but you totally left me where you don't belong, and like, hey, what about me? And that whole willingness and trust and faith in each other to be willing to be in that dance of connection, to be in that relationship where they're willing to give and take with each other and be in that space. And so this was what he was working on. He already knew that it wasn't like tying up a horse somewhere physically or doing things like that. And so when he came in today, that particular day, it was interesting because his probation officer was showing up to do a drug test and then was being invited to kind of stay and watch because he had court getting ready to come up and there were violations that were happening. And it was kind of like, hey, you know what, this is going to happen. You're going to be back in jail again. Can we really talk about this so that when we go in front of the judge, we've got a plan to say like, hey, this is what's happening. And this is what is potentially going to happen as you go forward with this. And this time the judge was saying, if this happened again, you're going to go into a much longer, what's called a post-detention program, which is a longer sentence that is like almost a locked facility and a treatment facility at the same time, to try to really help him figure this out. So this is kind of his like last ditch effort to figure this out on his own before the judge was going to help him figure it out in this greater thing. So he came in and he looked around and he was like, okay, Diesel was already standing up against the wall and he was licking on this thing called a salt block. And he kind of got a smile in his eye and he's like, I know what I'm going to do. And we were like, okay. And so he walked over to this corner of our ring where we have all these props. And so we have some poles that are like upright and can stand on their own. And he started picking these poles and carrying them over. And he built a box around Diesel as he was licking on the salt block. And Diesel just kind of looked at him like, what are you doing, bud? But he stayed there. He didn't move around. And he built this box. He thought it was good enough. And he was like, yeah, there's some poles here. I've kind of make it difficult for him to come out because he's such a big horse. He's not going to try to like squeeze through this little spot, but he could still squeeze through it. And so he was like, great, this will do it. And so he felt really proud of himself. He walked over and he was like, look what I did. You see how he's standing there. Well, once he kind of like looked over at Diesel with this moment of triumph on it, Diesel just like took his nose, pushed over one of the poles, stepped over top of it, walked out, walked straight to the kid and like looked at him and was like, yeah, now what? And this went on and on. So then the kid went back over, he put the poles back up, he even like reinforced it. He was like, okay, that's too big of a hole there. Let me go find something else to like put in that thing. And then he would come to Diesel, he would ask Diesel to follow him. And this was at liberty. So Diesel could have gone anywhere in the ring that he wanted to do. He just sat and waited and watched as the kid built a better, box. And then when the kid came and asked him, patted him on the shoulder, said, okay, follow me, come on. Diesel was like, okay, we'll go over there. Walked right into the box, like stood sideways against the thing. The kid would close the area down and walk back towards us. And when he got to us, Diesel would just knock over another one again, step over top of it, come straight to him, look at him like, what do you got now, kid? And the kid and Diesel did this dance back and forth, back and forth. He kept reinforcing this box with more and more poles, more and more things interwoven. Diesel kept knocking it down, and he kept like allowing himself to come back and forth. Well, after about 15 to 20 minutes of this process of him rebuilding a better box and coming back and Diesel breaking out of it, Diesel finally at this one time just stood next to us and didn't go with him back to the box after he reinforced it. And we kind of smiled and I asked him, I said, hey, can you just look at the box? And he was like, yeah. And I said, what does that look like to you? And he started laughing because he saw it. he was like, it's a jail cell. And I was like, yeah, it is. And I was like, and it's very interesting to me that Diesel keeps following you back over there. He keeps allowing you to put him back into jail. You come back over here. He gets out of jail and you go and rebuild a bigger jail cell for him. You lead him back into it. He follows you in. And this process is just keeps going back and forth and back and forth. And I'm curious, what is that for you? Because Diesel's not fighting you. He's willingly walking into that jail cell. He's even willingly watching you while you're building it. And I'm curious, what is that with you? What do you think Diesel's trying to help you see? And he thought for a moment and he came back and he was like, I think I like jail. And we were like, oh, you like jail? And he was like, yeah, I think I really do. I think when I'm in jail, I'm not stressed out by my life. I'm not stressed out. I don't have to worry about people judging me because I'm already in jail. They already know that I'm there and it's not that big of a deal. People outside, they always are pressuring me. The ones that know that I have a reputation, they want to fight me and so that they can get a bigger reputation. The court, the teachers, everybody judges me. They already think that I'm going to mess up. So whenever anything goes wrong, I'm always the first one like blamed for everything. And when I'm at home, I feel like I have to like fight the boyfriends that his mom was having, and I have to fight her with her drugs, and then I ultimately have to go figure out a way to get her drugs. And it's just so much easier if I'm back in that jail cell because I don't have to do my life. I don't have to worry about people in my life. And he just had this huge aha moment that when he would do things that were, quote, bad, it was really these protective parts of him that were saying, we don't want to keep exposing ourselves to more pain, to more heartache, to more worry. It's just easier if we go back into the jail cell where we don't have to work with the people. And the people that are in there, I actually really know how to work with them. I actually really get along with them. And it's the people outside that keep judging me. They don't understand me and they don't understand why I do what I do. It's just because I want to keep my mom safe. And I'm just trying to like not make waves, but I also don't want to lose her. And so as he was in this dance of building out a better jail cell, so to speak, and seeing how willing Diesel was and having this awareness that it was because there were just parts of him he didn't know how to work with. He didn't know how to work with the part of him that was so angry. He didn't know how to work with the part of him that was so hurt. He didn't know how to work with the part of him that was scared of what would happen to his mom. And at least when he was in jail, he felt like, he could say, I can't do anything about it. But when he was outside of detention, he felt that he had to be the one to protect her. And he didn't know how to do that in a way that would support him. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you want to do? If you could like reset this whole thing, and you could invite Diesel into this ground tie, into this standing in the box, wherever you wanted, how would you do it? And he looked at Diesel for a second and he looked back at the jail cell, and then I could see his eyes land in the center of this arena, right? This big, huge 90 by 125 foot arena, right smack dab in the middle of it, where no walls, no nothing. And he's like, I want to ask Diesel to go to the middle of the arena. Diesel started to walk to the middle of the arena on his own. He like stopped and was like, are you coming? and he's like, oh yeah, I'm coming. And so he caught up to him and together they walked smack to the middle of this arena. And he went ahead and patted him and he was like, all right, bud, we can do this. And he started to walk around it. Diesel started to move a little bit, but he reassured him. He was like, nope, we've got this. And then he walked around and around, all the way around the whole entire perimeter of this arena and back to him. And he was able to do that multiple times, and Diesel waited for him and watched him, and they would walk someplace in the arena together. He didn't believe that it wasn't a fluke, so he would ask him to go somewhere else, and he'd let him like go munch on some hay in the corner. Then he would say, hey, can you come back to the middle? And every single time Diesel was willing to say, yes, I'm willing to come back to the middle with you. Yes, I'm willing to stop eating this hay over here or exploring this part of the arena over here. And I'll follow you willingly back to the middle. I'm willing to stay while you walk around, and I'm going to trust you to come back. And he had to keep trusting. And the reason why he kept asking after like the third time of him doing this, I was like, oh man, you're pushing your luck, kid. And then I realized that was even a protective layer within me. Like, how many times can I ask for somebody to meet me in connection? How many times can I ask somebody to do something before I push my luck, right? So it was something I was able to work on the side while I'm holding this beautiful space for him. And what he realized when he came back is he was like, that is what I want. He's like, I want to be free to go live my life. And when I make the choice to say, come back to center, like you guys have been telling me to do, I want to be able to do it. I want to be able to stop whatever I'm doing and come back to center, remember who I am, and step forward again. And that was the day where he felt it, viscerally felt it. Every time Diesel was willing to stop what he was doing and say yes and return to the center of that ring, it was reinforcing him that he was worthy of that. He was worthy within himself to pick himself, right? That's the day that this beautiful being was able to choose self-love. On that day, he realized that there was a way to help himself begin again. There was a way to help himself feel that he truly had the inner strength. And Diesel was showing him that that was real because he kept being willing to do it over and over. And so did anything change outside of him? No. His outer world was still exactly what it was, full of all these people who had various levels of believing in him, still full of areas where he felt really overburdened and like that he had to fight for everything, or that he wasn't good enough and that he was just going to be that mess up that everybody just called that. And this brought in another quote of, no matter how difficult the past, you can always begin again. And that's what he and Diesel were doing in that moment. He was practicing, am I worthy to begin again? Am I worthy to allow myself to come back, to let myself out of the prisons that I'm in, that I'm holding myself? And can I soften the protective layers to see that I'm worthy of cultivating that self-love, that ability to go to a different part of myself, ask it to come back home, to come back to center, right? And no matter how difficult that past have been, that we can do that and we can be that because we want to bring self-love and acceptance. What he was able to do from that day forward is he still had to go back because he had some detention time over his head from the other violations. But when he was in there, he was even writing letters and bringing this in and having this dialogue. And when he came out, he was doing the same things. Like, how do I want to put myself back into my life? I don't want to keep doing it through these protective layers. What new choices can I make? How can I release myself from these prison cells versus continuously, basically, he had this epiphany moment. He's like, I've never come out of that cell. He goes, I might be walking around other places, but the bulk of me is still hanging out in that cell because that's where it feels safe. And so the parts of me that are showing up everywhere else in life, they're not the real me. The real me is actually stuck in this cell somewhere, and I don't want to be there anymore, right? And so that is kind of what I've thought for today's meditation this week, is to glean a little bit from his journey, right? And to step into this idea that I can begin a love affair with myself, right? To love oneself is to begin that lifelong romance. And that day in the arena, he was able to love himself. He was able to love all the parts of him. And he was also willing to look at what parts of him were imprisoned in that chance. And in that trance, he had a choice. Did he want to wake up and try something new? Or did he want to say, this is too scary. I just want to go back asleep. And so the guided journey that I have for this one is a little different from some of the other ones but we still will set that intention to bring this with us throughout the week. But I thought I would pull in a practice that I first came across in Carolyn Mace's book, Entering the Castle, based off of St. Teresa's work, The Interior Castle. And in Carolyn's book, she has a exercise where she asks you to go down into the dungeons of your castle and see who is there and why they're there and what is that up to. So to see the jail cells that we are creating for ourselves and really invite us into understanding how is that impacting us and how did those cells get built and why is that protective layer there so that we can invite ourselves to work with that protective layer differently. Again, nothing in this beautiful young man's life changed externally. What changed was him and how he met each of those moments, right? And how he even met each of those moments with people expecting him to be the older version of himself. How did he do that? He unwound all of that in his beautiful work that he was able to continue on and do as he stepped into learning how to really fully love and accept himself. Okay, so let's take a moment, take a nice deep breath in and out. And in true somatic fashion, what we're going to do is find these different, quote, jail cells within the arena that is us, right? So within and around your body. So in the last episode, I really started to tune you into the spaces that were around your body, the front, the sides, and the back. And so once again, we want to take up, above, and below, that you can tune into the whole entire space around you. So what are the different protective layers? The behaviors, the ways of being, the ways of interacting with the world, and which you feel trapped in. Like, I'm just stuck repeating this pattern over and over and over again, and I don't see a way out. Just like he repeated the pattern over. He kept building the jail cell a little bit bigger, a little bit more like substantial, and Diesel kept walking back in it, right? And so what are those for you? And where do you feel them in and around your body? So, for example, you might feel like a tension kind of coming around your whole body, restricting, maybe bringing those shoulders back and opening up that rib cage. Maybe you feel a desire just to put your head down and not feel like you can lift it up and see different ideas. Maybe there's like a clench, a restriction in the gut. Maybe you feel a sense of like pushing, like the weight of the world is just heavy and sitting on the shoulders, and the shoulders have to somehow hold it. Just what does that feel like in and around your body? And if you can, what would be the name over that jail cell? Or if there's a being in that cell, a part of you, somebody else, what is it that they would say to you built that cell? And so what are the thoughts, the behaviors, the patterns, the experiences that brought that punishment of that jail cell forward? And I invite you to see now if you can bring some love and compassion to that. Seek the grace of understanding. What created that cell? So in the story that I just shared with you, what created that cell was a lot of the experiences outside of his choices. As a child, those choices, those posts were being placed for him. by the choices that people in his family were making, by the choices that a system was making. All of these outside influences were creating a reinforcement of that clay layer. And so I know as I looked at my own jail cells and dungeons and the ways in which I was treating myself that were harmful to me, those were created from moments of feeling unworthy, moments of feeling judged, moments of feeling wrong for the way that I saw the world, moments of feeling like nobody was going to be able to meet me in there, so I need to hide that piece. In some of those moments, I gathered up the person that was quote unquote the persecutor of me and placed them in these cells. Sometimes I placed myself in them. I just feel into that. And just go ahead and pause me if you need to, but really invite that cell itself, or if there's a being in it, to share with you, how does it believe it helps you? So he was able to see that the jail cell gave him the actual space to be more him than all the other ways he had to show up outside of it. So it felt safer to be hidden within it and allowing these protective mechanisms to go out and be interacting with the world so that a part of him could stay safe, could stay free, which is really interesting, right? And so sometimes we try to lock something up because we don't think it will be safe outside. And that's the Golden Buddha story, right? They locked up the gold underneath the clay layers, and they still made the clay layers look good, but the gold was really hidden underneath because they didn't think it was safe to allow the gold to be seen. They didn't know how it would be honored by others and not seen as something that would be taken advantage of or destroyed, so that they could use it in a way that they wanted to. So check for that one as well. And then just like he did, if he weren't in that cell, or if that cell wasn't existing, holding somebody else in your field, punishing them for what has happened, if we could release that, how would you want to show up? What is the gold beneath the clay? What is the love affair that is wanting to be experienced? What types of choices, ideas, inspiration would you be able to engage in if this cell within you, if this imprisonment within you was released and replaced with loving yourself and finding healthy ways to protect yourself? And then just see if it feels good to you, to whatever way makes sense for you. Can you walk up there, unlock the cell door, and just let the door open? The possibility that you can walk in and out, right? And yes, that means if there's somebody else in there other than you, that you're going to let them go. You're going to give them their energy back and say, you know what? That experience in my past, I am not willing to sacrifice my current time to hold you, to keep the energy to hold you in this jail cell until that sentence is complete. Like, I'm letting that go. I'm returning that to you. I'm calling all my energy back to me. So if I'm stuck in a jail cell in your field, I'm calling that back. I'm picking that lock and doing a jailbreak. And I'm calling all that energy back to me. And now that it's coming back, how do I want to show up? For this young man, it was, I want to show up center stage. I want to show up in the center of me, of who I truly am. I don't know who that is. I don't know what that would look like, but I'm willing to start to show up there and see who meets me in that center. And so maybe Diesel, this beautiful horse, is going to come alongside you and say, hey, follow me. Maybe it's a part of you, the wisdom within you. Maybe it's another beautiful animal totem or companion that's going to lead you, if a human doesn't feel safe, to that place that is center stage of you, to the gold that is held within. Just see what it feels like to allow yourself to just even begin to acknowledge that that's possible. So for some of you, you might be able to get all the way to quote that center, that golden Buddha within. For some of us, we just want to take a look at it and we go, yeah, we see you, but this is as comfortable as I'm willing to come to that, because there's fear, right? There's other layers of imprisonment that as we come closer to that, we get more and more nervous that we're going to be seen to ourselves. And if we're seen to ourselves, what if I let myself down again, right? What if I accidentally show up in a way that doesn't honor that? Or what if I, hurt it myself instead of somebody else hurting it? And so it can get us to back up. In this quote, there's the answer, the lifelong romance. And when I think of a romance, it's not all gumdrops and roses. There are, highs and lows. There are areas of attunement and then misattunement. And then the question is, am I willing to do the repair work that honors that connection and that relationship? Am I willing to do the repair work that says, hey, I want to work through this place of misattunement, showing up in messy versions for myself or the other, and can I find my way back to that center? Can I pause and say, hey, even if the other person's really lost right now, I can find my own way back. And so in those moments where a part of me might get lost or misattuned, or I might do that to another part of myself, can I believe that somehow, some way I will find that center, right? And so for today, that's all we're asking is, are we willing to set that intention that we want to begin to have a lifelong romance with ourselves, right? That we want to have a lifelong romance with our lives. That we want to have a lifelong romance with the beings that are in our lives, both for a short amount of time and then some for longer spans, right? And that's the starting place, right? That was the starting place in that moment, in that arena, when he picked himself, when he said, this is where I want to come. I want to come to center. I want to open to experiencing what would it feel like to be able to call myself to my center. And so as we go out this week, just setting that intention to explore that, what would it feel like if in the moments where I feel shaky, I feel nervous, I feel overwhelmed, that I seek love and acceptance first, right? Instead of like condemning myself and judging myself and punishing myself and all these other ways, can I say, okay, where am I putting myself in a prison right now? Where am I putting myself in a jail cell? Where am I covering myself up with those layers of clay? And is that necessary? So as I move throughout the week, I'm really wanting my attention to be guided to those moments in which I am locking myself up. And what's up with that, right? Lovingly bring into like, what is happening in that moment where a part of me feels maybe it's safer to cover myself up. Maybe it's safer for somebody else if I like go lock myself up. Maybe a part of me feels that it's not worthy of being seen, felt, and heard. So what's happening in that moment where I realize I'm in a moment of restriction, I'm in a moment of collapse, I'm in a moment of protective layers cutting me off from showing up for myself and being center with myself, being in that place where I am in that ability to connect and to witness the different parts of me. So when I find myself in one of those moments, asking beautiful Reiki energy to come forward to help guide me. Guide me into what is the way in which I can open up the cell door, step one, seek some understanding what that's about, step two, and then step back out to being in that beautiful place of willingness, to be in that lifelong romance with myself and with others. And so it is. Peace, peace, peace. Oh. So I hope that this journey this week has been helpful for you. Really take it on a tour because it is really allows us to liberate ourselves, to step into that lifelong romance. I'd love to know how the meditation, what you found in and around your body is going for you. And I'd also love to know how this week of maybe just opening the jail cells, maybe not even stepping fully out, but at least gaining understanding of what they are and why they're there and how they were helping you so that we can bring love to that versus disdain, resentment, bitterness, and anger to that. Really freeing ourselves up from those entrapments within our own system and allowing ourselves to begin again. All right, offering you light, love, and joy on your journey. This is Michelle Holling-brooks, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to Soulful Practices. For more information on how to work directly with me or one of my guests, check out the show notes below. We'd love for you to also let us know what parts of this episode are speaking to you and how this practice is supporting you on your healing and spiritual journey. Please share this podcast with fellow seekers, travelers. Together, we can create a wave of soul-led beings in this world, offering you light, love, and joy on your journey. Michelle Holling-brooks. Until next time.